The knife is a Mako by Creely Blades in CPM Rex 121. Gary Creely is an American custom knife maker who's not afraid to work with exotic materials and super steels. I first started interacting with Gary because he had charted steels and super steels and their performance in things like wear resistance, toughness, and corrosion. And he was active on the groups, and in steel discussions he would post that chart, and I was critical of it. I was critical of the rankings that he was giving to steels, and that led to interactions between me and him, both online and off. Through our interactions and talking offline, at some point the idea came up of him designing a knife for me. We started talking about that, and it was a fairly long process. Went on for several months and had a lot of changes to it. The design in its infancy was very different. Gary would make CAD drawings and workups of things that me and him have talked about, and he would send them to me and we would discuss it. This is a prototype of one of the very early designs of the knife. The steel to be used was different. It was a Wharncliffe blade, full flat grind. The knife didn't have scales on it. Gary had sent me this prototype to use it and get a feel for it and critique it if there was anything that I wanted to critique it on. At some point in our interaction, Gary said, you know, I might have access to get some Rex 121. And when he said it, I really jumped at the opportunity. I had been wanting to work with the Rex 121 for a long time. Bringing Rex 121 into the equation was grounds for some change. I mean, this being a Wharncliffe, the design of the knife that I had in mind, and I guess that Gary had in mind, was purpose driven. So if you're changing the steel, you're going to be changing the overall design. The process continued, the design process continued, and it was me, you know, throwing out specs that I cared about as a customer to Gary, and him putting it through a creative process of his own and making it a reality. Things like the blade length and the overall size of the knife and the thinness of the grind, these were aspects that I really cared about, and Gary was taking those specs and making it into his own design. The handle of the knife is Gary's signature design. It's kind of his signature handle. From an ergonomic standpoint, it's outstanding. I really like it a lot. In getting this knife, it was sharpened. It was plenty sharp enough that I could use it. Any normal person would have been happy with it. So I put the knife through a little bit of use just to get a feel for the ergonomics and, you know, make a judgment on it. The cutting I did was on cardboard, and the ergonomics, they are outstanding. I'm very pleased with it. In between him ordering the Rex 121 and getting it and going into that process, he was working with M390 on something else. And so at this point, the design of this knife was finished. So he took the M390 that he had, some of it, and he made several of this model out of M390, one of which he started carrying. So because he had done it, I was able to see it finished, able to see the finished product, and I liked it very much. He had used black G10, so when it came time to choose the scale material, I had that as an example. Now, we still talked about different kinds of wood for the handle, different options, but because of cost and because I had a good example to look at, I went ahead and went with the black G10. We even talked about the level of finish on the black G10, the level of polish. So, I mean, the design came out very well. I'm very happy with it. It meets the specs that I wanted as a customer, and it's very much Gary's design. Came out very well. Rex 121 is a very extreme material. Composition-wise, it's 3.4% carbon, 4% chromium, 9.5% vanadium, 10% tungsten, 5% molybdenum, 9% cobalt. Um, it is very extreme. RC is usually very high, between 65 and 70. I was looking forward to working with Rex 121 from the onset of this project, and I've been wanting to work with Rex 121 for a long time. Because of the composition of the steel, you hear people say things like it can't be sharpened, or it can't be brought to a very high sharpness, and I simply wasn't willing to accept that. Rex 121 bridges the gap in industry between carbide applications for carbide tooling and traditional high-speed steels, applications where carbide is too fragile, it doesn't have the toughness for the application, and traditional high-speed steels don't have the wear resistance. In reading about it from Crucible's materials, in some applications, given, depending upon heat treat and application, Rex 121 can have wear resistance that's 50 to 100% higher than 10V. So, and I mean, 10V is no slouch. The Rockwell on this was 67. 67, 68 is where this came out. I'm fine with that. I think that going higher might challenge the edge stability of the steel. And even at 67, 68, I've got some concern about edge stability, and I'm interested to see how it will hold up in use. I needed to sharpen the knife, and I wanted to keep it. I wanted to try and keep it simple. I was confident that that would work out for me, and that would be okay. I started with a coarse DMT diamond plate, working with that. Because of the size of the edge bevel, the geometry of the blade, the knife sharpens very easily. So working with the DMT plate, it was no problem to trade a burr from side to side. After the DMT plate, after the coarse plate, I moved on to an extra fine plate. I worked with that, and again, the knife sharpens very well. I mean, the other thing is, Rex is, while it is high in carbide and it is at a very high hardness, you're talking about working on diamond, and I mean, the way that I'm sharpening is very aggressive, so it really, I wasn't expecting it to be a problem. It's not a problem for Maximet, so I was thinking this would be fine. After the extra fine plate, I moved on to a Spyderco ultrafine bench stone. I worked with that, and I noticed that the level of sharpness wasn't coming up on Rex that I would normally get on other steels like S90V or S110V. There was a difference there. The edge felt almost choppy or unrefined. After the ultrafine stone, I moved on to strops, and I started with a 4-micron diamond strop on wood. I was working with diamond emulsion from Gendi Industries, and it's poly diamond, so poly is going to cut more aggressively, and I was looking for that. I was looking for it for burr removal. It wasn't any problem for that strop to completely remove the burr from the knife. And the other thing is, wood strops, if you're talking about basswood, the strops tend to be more aggressive than leather, especially for burr removal. So, I mean, I was really being intentional with what I was doing was really on purpose, and I was willing to bet that that strop with that compound would have no problem removing the burr. After that strop, I moved on to a 1-micron compound on leather. I was using Hand American diamond spray, mono diamond, but I mean, at the point when the burr's removed, you're just talking about refinement of the edge. I worked with that leather strop and then moved on to a 0.5 micron leather strop diamond, and then a 1/4 micron leather strop diamond. After the 1 micron, I checked the edge, and it was able to cut a free hanging hair, and it was beginning to whittle the hair. It still felt strange. It didn't feel like what edges normally feel like off of 1 micron, or even the 1/2 micron or 1/4 micron. After the 1/4 micron strop, I took it down to more extreme levels in the as far as abrasion goes, moving on to a 0.05 micron leather strop. at this point I was working with products from Ken Schwartz, and again, you're talking about poly diamond abrasives. After the .05, I moved on to a .025 and finished with a .005 micron. So what you're talking about is taking Rex 121 to 3.2 million grit. The edge that came up, it is different. It does feel different than a lot of other edges. I was surprised at the level of polish that came up on the steel. It didn't mirror the edge, but I did get a degree of polish that I wasn't expecting from it. I put the edge under a microscope, and it did still have a very coarse finish to it. The edge is ultra aggressive, and it did come up to hair whittling. Wasn't really any issue with that, other than the fact that the edge does feel a little bit different than most steels, even high carbide steels would feel after that kind of a sharpening. So I'm very happy with the knife. I'm very happy with the model. I was looking forward to working with Rex, and I'm looking forward to working with it more. You got to give a lot of respect to Gary Creely for being willing to work with such an extreme material, but it turned out well, and I'm very happy with the purchase.